Hi everyone, this is the next video for sequencing transformations. You notice this one is titled Sequencing Rigid Motions because it doesn't specify whether we're going to do translations, rotations, reflections. It's going to be a combination of the three of those. So exercise 1 is right up here, and as before I've already labeled my points. I've listed the coordinates, so if you need to pause the video and label yours, do that as well. And we're going to jump into doing a sequence of rotating a triangle 90 degrees, and then we're going to translate it along this vector right here. Okay? So again, just sequencing is just putting two or more motions together and all into one problem. Alright? So first, let's do the triangle. Let's rotate the triangle 90 degrees, which means we're going to rotate it counterclockwise. And I've left my rules right up here. This is the rule for rotating 90 degrees. So I'm going to switch over to blue here and do that transformation, that rotation of 90 degrees in blue. Alright, so I'm going to put this one right up here. This is what I'm doing, rotating 90. And so according to my rule, the x and y, they change place, and the y negates itself. So I'm going to turn this into -2, -6, and this b is going to turn into -7, -6, and the c is going to turn into -2, and it's going to stay -3, but switch places. Alright, and I'll just label those afterwards here. Probably should have put them in front, but that's okay. And then I'm going to go over here and label it. And you notice I'm going a little quicker today because we've done this for 3 videos now. We've sequenced these rigid motions, and this is the 4th video. So let's see, -2, -6 is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right down here. And of course I said we're doing a 90, which is counterclockwise. And again, it makes sense that here's my quadrants, and it makes sense that I would start in quadrant 2 and rotate counterclockwise and end up in quadrant 3. So that's looking good. So this is A prime, and B prime is at -7 and then down 6. So that one's going to be right here. Okay, and C prime is going to be at -2, -3. So that one's going to be right here, and then I'll connect it with some lines. Okay, so there's my first rotation of 90 degrees, and then I'm going to switch over to green here, and I'm going to do a translation. And I want to know what I'm going to move my points, how I'm going to move them. So I go over to my vector here, and it's starting at this point here and ending at this point here. And the nice thing is it's going horizontal, so I know I'm not going up or down. I'm not moving in the y direction any, so I'm going to put a 0 right there. And all I have to do is count. I'm starting here 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to translate everything in the +4 direction. Okay, so again, I'm going to start with the blue up here because that's the image I created, right? So I'm going to translate everything 4 units in the x direction, which is going to add 4 to each one of these x's. So that's going to turn -2. I'm going to add 4 and get +2. And the y direction, the y value isn't going to change because I'm just adding 0. Alright, this is going to be B double prime. Ooh, that is not B double prime. That is A double prime. Sorry about that. Okay, B double prime, that's what I was thinking. I'm going to add 4 again to -7, and I get -3, -6. That is B double prime. And C double prime, I need to add 4 to the -2 right here. and that is going to give me a positive 2. And the negative 3 is staying the same. Alright, so I go over here and I slide everything 4 places to the right. And that should match up with C double prime, which it does if I check those coordinates. And let's see, let's move A, 1, 2, 3, 4. That should match up with these coordinates here, which it does. Alright, that's A double prime. And B double prime is the last one, and that one is not going to go out of that quadrant. It's just going to go over 4 places and be right here. Okay, and that is B double prime. And it's nice that I can do different colors to show you guys here, because that is going to overlap that blue triangle. Okay, did I miss a prime up there? I think I did. Alright, so there you have it. Here's the original. The blue is the first image, and the green is the second image out of that sequence. So there you have it. Okay, so it's just really combining a couple things that we've done before kind of separately, so now it's putting them together. Alright, here is exercise 2, and exercise 2 we're going to do a reflection over the x-axis. We're going to do that first, and then we're going to translate it along this vector. Okay, so again, I've labeled my triangle and I've listed my points, my coordinates for my points. So I would like you to do the same, and the first thing we're going to do is reflect over the x-axis. Okay, and this time I'm going to make sure that I put my points down here first so they're in the correct order. Okay, so we're going to reflect over the x-axis. Now, if you remember about reflecting, you simply have to count how many places you are away from that axis. We did have rules listed, like if you're going to reflect over the x, it does one thing to the coordinates. If it reflects over the y, you do another. I don't have them listed over here because I have my rotations. But reflecting over the x-axis, remember that is this axis that goes horizontally. Okay, and while I talk, I'm going to put my quadrants up here as well. And if I'm reflecting over the y-axis, so that's the vertical axis right here, but this time we're going over the x-axis, so right here. So I would expect that after I get done reflecting this, it's going to be down in quadrant 4. Okay, so I simply count A and C. Those are pretty easy. Those are directly on the x-axis. So if I were to flip this over the x-axis, well, A and C, they're not going to move. They're going to be in the same place. They're right on the axis to begin with. So my image for A prime and C prime are exactly the same points. I'll even put little dots right here, right over my red, and to show that they're going to be in the same place. And I'll put A prime right here and C prime down here as well. Okay, now what does B do? Well, you have the little rule. The rule for flipping over the x-axis is that the x stays the same and the y turns opposite. Now, if you don't remember that, you just simply count. You start up here at B and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You got to the axis, well, you keep going and you do the same amount. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you'd end up right here. This would be where B prime is. Okay, and like I said, it keeps the x value the same and turns the y value to the opposite, which is this point right here, 3, -5. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and connect to those, and you can see I have the reflection of that triangle. Okay, so now let's do the second part here. Now they want to translate it along the vector. Okay, so I have to know, well, what am I moving my x value and what am I moving my y value? Now the exercise before, it was pretty easy because the vector was just a horizontal line. This one, it's diagonal. So let's count. Alright, let's count. Let me draw in little dashed lines here. And these are going to be the squares that I'm going to count to see how far is it moving in the x direction. Well, if I count from here to here, it's moving 2. Okay? And if I count from here up to here, it's moving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's moving 6. So I'm moving a positive 2 because I'm moving to the right, and I'm moving a positive 6 because I'm moving up. Okay, so that's the translation I want to do. So I start with my blue points at the top. They're going to turn into double primes. So I'm going to write those there. Okay, so if I start with 1, 0, well, I want to translate it. I want to add 2 to the 1, so I get a 3. And what do I want to add to the y coordinate? Well, I want to add my 6. So I'm going to get a 6. That is the point that A prime is going to move to. Alright, and I do the same thing with B prime. I add 2. See, right there's my 2. I add 2 to it, and that's a 5. And I add 6 to the y value, and that's going to give me a positive 1. Alright, very important to know how you add and subtract your integers in this case. Okay, and do the same thing with the C prime. I'm going to add 2. That's going to give me a 6. And I'm going to add 6 to this 0 right here, and that's going to also give me a 6. So I'm going to go ahead and plot these points. Alright, 3, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's going to come right here, and you see how these things get kind of messy. Alright, that is going to be a double prime. Okay, and 5, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up 1, that's going to be B double prime. Alrighty, and 6, 6 is going to be, let's see, that's 5, 1, so if I go one more over and I go up 6, it's going to be even with that one, and that's going to be C double prime. So here is my translation, the same as this vector. Okay, so again, things we've done before, but just now putting them together in one problem. Okay. Alright, now this is exercise 3, and again I've labeled my triangle with the coordinates over here, and we're going to be doing a reflection now over the y-axis, and then we're going to do a rotation of 90. Okay, so first things first, rotation of, oh, not rotation, first things first is a reflection over the y-axis. Okay, and let me turn it blue so we have something different here. So I'm going to take A, B, and C, which I've already labeled, and I'm going to turn them into the image of A prime, B prime, and C prime. Alright, so if you remember back to reflecting over the y-axis, the rule was pretty easy. Whatever you started with, x, y, if you reflected over the y-axis, it changed the x value to the opposite and left the y value alone. That was the rule that we came up with. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that right here. I'm going to change the x value to the opposite and leave the y value alone, and I get that point there. Alright, same thing with point B. That's going to change to that point. And the same thing with C. That's going to change to C prime being that point. Alright, so if you've done this with us all along here, that should be pretty straightforward. And so now I just have to graph them. So 7, -6 is going to be right here. That's going to be A prime. And 4, -2 is going to be right there. That's B prime. And let's see, C is going to be 1, -6, which is going to be right there. Okay, so I'm going to connect the dots, and I have a triangle that's the same size and the same shape, although it's been reflected, so it's flipped over that y-axis. Alright, now we're all done with this, so I'm going to get that out of the way for us, and I'm going to switch over to green, and now we're going to do a rotation of 90. Okay, so we're doing this one right here, and since this is a 90-degree rotation, which means we're going counterclockwise, so I would expect that this would rotate up to quadrant 1. So let's see what happens when we do a rotation of 90 degrees. Okay, I'll move that down a little bit. Okay, so here we go. I start with A prime, and that's going to turn into a double prime. So remember the rotation of 90 here. It switches the X and Y around, and it turns the Y negative, alright, or negates it, I should say, turns it opposite. Alright, so that 7, -6, if I turn those around and then take the opposite of that 6, it turns into that point here, and I go over and graph that. That is 6, 7. 4, 5, 6, 7. That's going to be right here, and looks good so far because that is the quadrant I predicted that I was going to be up into. So we're going to do B double prime the same way. It starts out with 4, -2. I switch those around and turn the Y value to the opposite, and yes, to 4. That is also up in the first quadrant, so that's B double prime. Okay, and one more to go. That is C double prime. That's going to switch these around and turn this to the opposite, and 6, 1 is going to be right here. That is C double prime, and connect the dots, and there you go. Now rotation, we've said before, same size, same shape, however it changes the orientation, it changes the direction it's pointing, which it did. So it looks like we did good with that one, and we ended up in the first quadrant with all the points. Okay, so there you have it, really putting the last 3 videos together and kind of mixing them up a little bit. So hopefully that was good for you. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.